Hey everybody, welcome to Freebird. I'm so excited to be sharing with you one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. And we're going to be sharing the mesmerizing story of Krissy Jewell in this episode, which is called Live Your Dream Behind and Beyond the Healing of Mental Health. Krissy is a single mama bear to an incredible 20-year-old young man. She spent nearly a decade as a coach, a healer, a facilitator. I'm going to say a scholar and a mystic as well. Let's just throw those two in there. After years of dedicating herself to the well-being of others, she's now embracing a journey of self-discovery and fulfillment. Tune in to this episode to hear about how Krissy is traveling full-time, living her best life, living her dream life, and proving that healing does really go beyond the boundaries that we once knew. So I'm so excited to have you. Hello, how are you?
Yeah. I'm so good. I'm so good.
Hold up. I think I don't know what's just happened, but you're just a
Of
frozen
me, and I'm
time.
so glad.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, sorry, the Wi-Fi in Asia is not amazing.
This is going to be a very playful session.
Always.
Of course, when you and I come together, there's always different things happening. It's wonderful. So you're in Vietnam,
Currently for another just under a week, and then I have no idea.
and then you have no idea. All right, well, let's start with I'm going to talk to you. We're going to start really we're going to start happy and then we're going to go deeper and deeper. But what does your dream life, what does that look like for you? What would you, how can you share with us what living your dream life looks like for you? And has that evolved over time, Krissy?
Yeah. Uh, so I guess my dream life, it has evolved and it hasn't evolved. So in the hasn't evolved and has sort of been consistent and stayed the same has always been travel. The intention has always been to travel and explore the world and meet myself and meet other cultures and learn and experience and grow. So that's remained consistent the whole way through. Um, but the opposite of that and how it has changed is that I thought I would be doing it for others. I thought I would be traveling the world and running events all over the world, and maybe I still will. But right now, my dream life is exploring me and putting me first and meeting me in different versions of me and in different places and just experiencing life and learning about what actually lights me up and what brings me joy and what brings me happiness and learning how to do this healing process and evolution process in the most easiest, gentle, joyful way, as opposed to the most painful, excruciating, deep, dark ways.
Mm. Which can sometimes be that when we're processing and peeling off the layers of the onion and going into the deep, dark, unconscious and shadow work, it can seem like you're, experiencing, I speak from personal experience, but like the dark night of the soul. And so I love what you said about, hey, we can grow and we can evolve, and it can be done through joy and laughter and travel. So, what has inspired you to evolve in this way? Because as a coach, facilitator, often we're all about others. And so, what inspired you to take a step towards, no, this is now about me? And yeah, just talk to us about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, I feel like we're about to go straight back into the deep then, into the dark. Um, so there's two things here, really. The first was a dark night of the soul earlier in the year. And there was no catalyst for this one. There's always been a catalyst. There's always been a reason why I've had a dark night of the soul. Whereas this one in February, it came from nowhere. It sideswiped me. And I was like, where is this coming from? Why is this happening? And in that moment, I just went, I need to go and see my VA in the Philippines. I need to travel. I had a moment of like remembering you and I going to Mexico the year before, and I went, you know what? That choice to just go, you know what? I'm going traveling, and I need to give myself this grace and this permission to go and do what lights me up. And it was in that moment that I realized the evolution and the process of peeling back and looking at and exploring and feeling and all of the things gets to be in the way that we choose, in the way that lights us up, as opposed to sit at home in the darkness with myself, in solitude, with my thoughts, with my feelings, um, and evolving in that way, because that's what I've done for 2 years. 2 years ago, I lost my uncle.
Take a deep breath with you.
And here I was like, yeah, I've had a great week. Like, I've got all this emotion out, and today's going to be different. But, 2 years ago, yesterday, he decided that he would take his life. And it was in that moment, as a coach, we put others first. And, I don't know about you, but I got into coaching because I wanted to help people, and I wanted to it really come back because I wanted to help my mum, and I never did, and I never had that opportunity to. So I got into this work to be able to help people like my mum, and to be able to help people that were just so stuck in their trauma. And so losing my uncle, particularly to suicide, it had me questioning everything. Why am I in this work? What am I doing this for? If I can't help the ones that I love, why am I here? And it shed and stripped back and ripped me open in all of the ways. So I spent 2 years or 18 months diving deep into every aspect of me, into every aspect of my work, every aspect of saying no to other people because I just didn't have capacity to hold myself. Um, Sorry, that is on my phone that's no longer working. Um, so it took me into the greatest self-discovery of choosing me, of saying no to people that I loved and adored that needed me and that I'd always been there for. Um, and it was so uncomfortable.
Mm, mm.
It was so uncomfortable to put me first. It was so uncomfortable to say no to people who I loved and adored and would drop everything for. It was so uncomfortable to sit in all of it.
I can
And
imagine it would have been for you because you're also, I would imagine you were also grieving. You were grieving
huge.
and going through that realization and asking yourself all of the questions and creating boundaries at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was on the back end of an emotionally abusive relationship. So, who I was in that moment when it all happens with my uncle, I was almost like a shell of a person. So I was already self-inquiring, and I was already in the depths, and I was already, asking those questions as to how did I get here? And, you know, that is the pinnacle, right? Of when
And for those of you that are listening, Krissy is in Vietnam at the
how did we get
moment.
here? Pardon?
That's okay. It's just cutting um, in and out, but I've got you now.
Okay. So yeah, it was already such a state of like deep self-inquiry and asking the big questions around, what was this happening for me for? What were the lessons? How did I get here? All of those things. And one of the key pieces in recognizing where I had ended up from that relationship was that I put everybody else before me. To the point where a month later, losing my uncle, I actually just physically had nothing left. So even if I wanted to show up for others, I literally couldn't. I remember being in fetal position in my caravan one day and I pleaded to God. I said, if you're real, now is the time to show me because I have nothing left. And it was single-handedly probably the hardest day and single-handedly the most beautiful day because God showed up.
Mm.
And my life has changed significantly since.
I feel, I feel that so much, and I can see that in your beautiful face and in the vulnerability and strength in your message. It's, sometimes we ask why we're going through this, and for yourself, it's can really feel the strength and obviously bringing you on purpose. Would you say, Krissy, would you say that what was how did God show up in that moment?
You know what? I struggle to articulate this. And I think anyone who's had deep conversations with God may, because it's so, how do you put into words something so miraculous and so love filled and so not of this world? Um, so I'll do my best to articulate it in words. I've been a very spiritual person. I've been very connected to angels and, my crossed over loved ones and to the universe and been a manifesting queen and all the things. So I've been very connected to spirit. But when I had this moment and God showed up for me, it was almost like in that moment that I asked for God to hold me, I could literally feel almost like I'd had it on a 5-MeO journey where all you could feel is love.
Mm. You received grace.
But it was more than that. Pardon?
You received grace.
Yeah. And it was almost like I felt the arms of like my mum or, my nana or, someone who's passed. I felt their arms around me in spirit before, but this was like a cocooning of grace, of love, of divinity. It was just the warmest feeling I can ever explain and not be able to explain at the same time. And it was in that moment, I just felt peace. I had gone from complete and utter distress in fetal position, just so lost and so hurt. Are you there?
Yes. So you've gone from being so lost and so hurt to feeling really
To almost instant peace,
wow.
instant gratitude, instant abundance of just, I don't know if joy is the right word, but I'm going to just say grace.
Yeah. That's how it feels to me too, as you're speaking about it. It's just this unfathomable sense of peace, which is expanded, holding you. It just feels so beautiful. So I want to ask you actually, Krissy, and this is a conversation, I feel like a dialogue I want to be having a lot more with people, but I'm super intrigued to hear your perspective, is do you feel that there is a link between God or that, that grace or that spiritual connection and mental health challenges?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what can you share with me about that?
I guess I'll go into my initial experience, but then I want to actually speak into what I witnessed as a child with my mum suffering schizophrenia, bipolar as well, and
Yeah.
what I saw that I can explain now that I've had my own experiences. For me, I feel like the depression that I went through leading into my uncle's suicide was because I wasn't living on purpose. I wasn't living in truth. I was still showing up for other people and I was still giving to everybody. And then all of a sudden, there was a separation between where I thought life was going to be and where it was.
Mm.
What I thought life was going to look like and where it was. What I thought life was going to feel like and where it was. And, that depression was really just warning signs for me. And I feel like when we don't recognize that there's such a gift in depression and anxiety and all of the mental health labels, that we actually can recognize the gifts in that and we can shift what we need to shift, or we can really acknowledge what we need to acknowledge. But unfortunately, being the system that it is, if I can speak into this, it disables and it disarms and it disables.
Mm.
Disability, it disables people from their wisdom and from their magic and from their superpower, because I truly believe mental illness, mental health, it's a superpower. ADHD is a superpower. Being bipolar is a superpower. Depression is a superpower. And I say this because you think about depression, you have the greatest ability to feel. You have the
Mm.
greatest ability to love. You wouldn't be able to feel, and I have soul bumps as I say this.
Mm.
You wouldn't be able to feel depression and experience depression if you didn't have the capability to love deeply,
Mhm.
to lose deeply, to feel so deeply. That is a superpower. ADHD, to be able to witness and experience life in fast forward,
Mm.
because that's what it is. The brain is literally just in fast forward. And that when you are focused on something that you appreciate and you love, you can do so many different things all at once. Superpower. But yeah, we're disabled with it. So
And I mean, also just to add to that, it doesn't feel like a superpower when you're in it.
the disability of mental health was from my childhood, when my mum was diagnosed with bipolar, and then she was diagnosed with bipolar schizoaffective. And even at the ages of 12, 13, witnessing my mum having these psychotic episodes, witnessing my mum using and knowing where her superpower was without the consciousness of that, to be able to get what she wanted, to be able to change and manipulate her reality, I then started to see, one, it's just her trauma playing out. It's a reality she used to escape or to create more control in her life, which she didn't have. And so it was from a young age that I realized mental health isn't what we're told, isn't what the system imposes upon humanity to disable. And I have experienced my own challenges, but also recognized my superpowers in those. And so when we have the ability to recognize that it's so much more than just a disability to disable us from our consciousness, from our body, from our superpowers, there's grace in that
Mm.
and there's beauty in that, but we're not taught that.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that approach and all that perspective. I also, what would you say to, I mean, I think that the biggest point here is you were able to connect in to that grief or that sadness or that loss or whatever challenge you experienced in your mental health reality. Um, and that's a sense of empowerment also for you to make the choice to actually reconnect, because I can imagine that for a lot of people and working with people in who are struggling with mental health issues, they aren't as empowered to make that choice, or they don't know where to begin, or they can't really process the grief, or it's overwhelming, or the trauma is incredibly deep, or it's cellular. And so what would your advice be for people that say to you, Krissy, I can't even get out of bed, like I can't get out of bed? I'm literally, in paralysis, or the pain is so deep and I've had this pain for 50 years. If you're speaking to a 60-year-old man or who is suicidal or, just really can't cope, what would you say to help move their consciousness, if you like, to a paradigm where they can empower themselves?
Totally. And I think this is a great question. Thank you. And I get it because I have been in that. I have been in stages where I couldn't get out of bed. I have been in stages where I couldn't leave the house, where my anxiety was through the roof that I didn't want to face or deal with anyone. I get the depths of where it can take you. And my advice, not even my advice, my
Yeah.
experience in that, because everyone's different and everyone has their own challenges. My experience when I was in those depths is every day is a new day, and just take every moment and feel how I feel in this moment, and bringing more presence instead of being so stuck in the past, so focused on the future. It was just bringing that's occurred now. Oh, okay, it's not actually how I feel today. Bringing presence into actually how do I feel in my body today can allow me and could allow me to go, okay, well, just get up. Or some days it was like, I am so heavy, I don't want to deal with life. And so I'm just going to stay in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was giving myself grace to stay in bed on those days. It was giving myself grace to, and giving myself permission to deeply honor my body and deeply honor the pain and deeply honor whatever was alive for me in that moment, if it was true. And by true, I mean genuinely I could feel it in my body. And it wasn't just the habitual habit of I've been in this for 50 years, I've been in this for 2 years, whatever it is. The other thing that truly helped me shift this and to true, because I disconnected. You mentioned there that, and disassociation, when the pain is so much and when trauma is so much, it's a true thing. Like our unconscious can only deal with how much it can deal with in that moment. And so when it's too much, we disassociate. And so it's bringing that presence back in, bringing that presence into the body. How do we feel? How, like, just allowing ourselves to breathe. But also, one of the greatest things I did was go and get a job.
Mm-hmm.
I literally gave myself a healthy distraction in that I had to show up.
Yeah,
I didn't have a choice because I
absolutely.
don't believe in calling in sick. And it was just like, you have to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, me being me, I had to show up for other people, because if I had to show up in my business, I wouldn't do it because it was for me.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. And um, someone had said to me a few months ago, find a hobby or get into routine. And I know what's worked for me is actually doing the same thing every single day. And for me, it was cleaning. It was cleaning, reorganizing the house, removing the clutter. It was almost symbolic of, okay, out with the old, and I call it from chaos to order. I actually instantly felt in my mind that I was moving into a cycle of order, and that all of the chaos was kind of that chaos was, and the intensity and the drama and was kind of coming to an end. And so having your vision on something, whether it be work or a purpose, or for me it was cleaning, and clearing is also really good, in my experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, Krissy, do you feel that do you recognize any hidden aspects in mental health, whether it be emotional or psychological, that people veil, that people often use to mask what's really going on for them? And how can they begin to remove some of these stigmas or illusions or shadows, or like, so that they can confront it?
Yeah. Great question. I feel like the first step is truly recognizing that there is another way. Like, I'm a very solutions driven person. I'm also a very ego driven person. So I don't like people to tell me that I'm going to end up in a psych ward. I have a real, like, I'm going to prove you wrong type mentality. Um, so I guess that's the number one belief.
Can you just repeat that
You missed
belief?
that, didn't you? Bless.
Go back to the juice.
Oh, geez, amazing. Until it's not.
Keep us in
Okay,
suspense.
so let me go back. So one of the things that I've found, like, I'm a very ego driven person,
Yeah.
and I was told at a young age that I would end up in a psych ward like my mum. And so I'm grateful for that because I did everything in my power to make sure I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I had the belief that I had to find the solution. And so when you have a belief, regardless of whatever it is, it's going to drive you. And if you have a belief and you've adopted the belief of the system of disability, of disablement, then you're going to possibly struggle a little bit more. And so my first step for you would be to be open, to start to open your mind to other possibilities. And the fact that you're watching this or listening to this podcast, you're already doing that. So celebrate yourself as we celebrate you for doing that, because there are so many solutions available. And when you start to step out of the system, and the system's there and it's got its place, and we get to honor that. And also there's so many other ways that provide empowerment and ability and change and evolution. And my my encouragement for you is to open your mind to what else is possible, to really start to change your belief that, one, you've survived this, probably survived so much more, and to continue to find the way
Mm.
to improve your life, to be better, to give yourself permission that you actually deserve better. And then do not stop, as if it's your child who is needing the last bit of life force from you. If you're a parent, you'll understand that. You are your child. You are your greatest child. And if you look for the solution for your inner child to find home, love, safety, you will find the answers to help enable and empower your mental health in ways far beyond what you even know is conceivable right now. And I'm living proof.
You are
But you've
absolutely
got to be open.
such an inspiration. And I love hearing this because I know that not only, I mean, you're one of my besties, you're one of my girls. So I know what you've gone through and what you've had to go through and where you're at right now, and the struggle and the empowerment and the choices that you have had to make for that child to feel safe and loved and held, and for that child to actually live her dreams. And for me, that's a freaking testimony. And it's a testimony because if you can do it, Krissy, you know, so many others can do it too. And I often speak to my clients especially about removing the identity that we create around mental health, because often, you know, irregardless of whether people are in the system, there are a lot of people who aren't in the system who have got mental health challenges that are very real. They've been abused. There's, you know, they've become the abuser. You know, there's addictions, but they're not in the system because there's stigma in the system. So they just hide and they conceal behind this shadow, if you like. So what
For
I
sure.
actually want to say is, even for people who are in the system, which you've touched on, be mindful not to create an identity around your mental health issues as though it's become who you are. It is, you know, a part of the journey and a part of your, which is what I'm hearing you say, Krissy, is like that recovery comes from being choosing, it's actually willfully, fully choosing you and making that choice.
Absolutely.
And I always say, do to any of my clients when I see them, especially for the first session before I choose to take them on, I always say, do you believe that you can get through this? And if the answer is yes, I will work with them most of the time, because I know that that's a big thing for someone to actually own when they feel like shit and say, yeah, you know what? I still believe there's hope there. And it's
Definitely.
that belief that you were talking about. So let me ask you, does it ever go away, these mental health? Does it ever, like, it's a question that,
Such a big loaded question, man.
does it ever go away? Like, what happens to it? You know, these anxieties or depressions, or what happens to them? Shed your wisdom.
Yeah. Man, this is a question I often face against with myself. And I'd love to say it goes away. I would love to feel that it goes away, but I feel like it just evolves. Everything is energy, and everything, you know, if we can detach from the identities, if we can detach from the construct of what mental health is and actually just allow the flow of energy,
Oh, I love that.
which is what I'm finding on this trip and why I'm finding that the healing evolution process is so much more gentler than it's ever been before, is because I'm now no longer attaching to identities or to thoughts or to expectations or to anything, and I'm just allowing the flow and evolution and the movement of the energy to be witnessed, but not taken on like baggage anymore.
I love
So
that.
yeah, and me too. And it just feels so expansive in that. And I've never experienced that before. And I've experienced depression on and off since I was probably 12. Anxiety a lot throughout my entire life. And this is the first time I can honestly say that there's a level of peace and evolution that's occurring that is so gentle and so peaceful and so harmonious. And the one thing I put it down to is detachment.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned about identities and not attaching or not identifying with the mental health or the label. And I don't feel like that's just limited to mental health. I feel like it's limits. It can be a construct we put upon ourselves in every way. We identify as this or that, and we have such a stigma and such a um, confinement when we attach ourselves to any identity, whether it be what our parents wanted, what society wants, what anyone wants regarding anything, or even ourselves. As soon as we put that expectation and that identity and that hat on, that I have to be this way or I have to show up in this way, we're literally limiting ourselves. And it's in those moments that we can then put so much pressure on ourselves that leads to mental health. It leads to these disempowering thoughts, beliefs, feelings. So does it go away? I don't know. How willing are you to continue to show up for yourself? How willing are you to choose to change the way you believe and see and structure your life? How willing are you to think anything is possible? And by that, I mean actually limitless.
Mm. Yeah, I
I
love
don't
I
know.
love that. And I would add to that, because just everything you're saying is like, yes, 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 yes. I'm really loving it. Um, and also I would suggest to anyone listening, make time to sit with your inquiry, or your depression or your anxiety or your grief
Absolutely.
or your pain, because the accumulation of trauma or being in the spaces that are adding to your discomfort doesn't make you mentally diseased or incapable. It means that you need to potentially review your environment and actually raise
Yeah.
your standards and make better decisions for yourself, or lose some of those people or addictions. So it's almost like, hey,
Uh-huh.
you know what, you might be absolutely perfectly fine and accumulated some transgenerational stuff. And really, what you need to do is just change your environment as an option. Or, for me, I remember going to a psychologist years ago, and I just wanted to remove the anxiety. And after a session with me, and she's been following me on socials, she's like, yours, which is what you were saying, Krissy, your superpower is in your sensitivity. And your sensitivity is the degree and the depth of what you're able to feel, and actually, if you've got consciousness and self-awareness, it means you can not attach to that story and go, oh, I feel this. Okay, what do I want to do with that feeling or that belief? Or
Totally.
exactly. So I think we're in alignment.
Absolutely. And I think on that too, we're not, particularly as Australians, like Aussie Battler, we're not designed and we're not taught how to feel. And we're told don't cry and it's weak to cry and all those things. And that's where the gold is. That's where the magic is. So if you can sit in that and give yourself permission to sit, I think it's one of the childhood stories that they tell you. You can't go around it, you can't go under it, you can't go over it, you've got to go through it. And that's always in my head anytime I'm literally moving through something. I have to go through this. If I continue to avoid it, or if I run away, or if I do everything in my power to not go through it, it's just going to prolong it. It's going to make it bigger, make it uglier, and it's going to manifest in different ways. And so what I've found, the easiest way to actually just deal with, I say, I don't like that word, but experience it and witness it in a different way, to be able to shift that feeling and that emotion and that frequency the quickest, is to just go in it. Just go straight in it, feel it, whether it takes an hour, whether it takes a day.
Hey, beautiful. Whether it takes an hour or a day, I love it, or for however long it takes. Have you had support? What has, over and above your own mindset and your belief structures, has there been anyone or community or, people around you like that have been able to, so what else has supported you on this
Yeah.
journey?
You know what? There's no way I would not have survived the last 2 years if it hadn't been for my community,
Mm.
if it hadn't been for beautiful people like you, and for,
Yeah, it's getting me emotional too.
oh man, like we're not here to do life alone.
Mm.
And we're not designed to sit in a room and suffer. We're not designed to face our shit alone, to face our demons alone. And whether sometimes we have to pay for people to do that because we don't have that or we don't believe it's possible, or you just have to get out of your comfort zone and start to go to and find. There are so many people and so many places out there where you will find your people. But firstly, you need to find yourself so you know who you're actually attracting. But there are so many people out there, and I'm so grateful for the amazing people that I have in my life. Yesterday was my birthday, and a lot of my people know how big of a deal my birthday has always been. And then having my uncle choose that on my birthday, they really showed up for me in the last, I mean, they've always showed up for me, but specifically the last 36 hours, like you calling me last night and just the joy and the laughter and the love and support.
Mm.
it makes everything worthwhile. And you realize you're not doing it alone. And you realize that life is so freaking beautiful. And that it's in these connections and it's in allowing that vulnerability and in allowing other people to come into your life and recognizing that, yes, there's a possibility of being hurt. And yes, there's a possibility of being betrayed. And yes, there's a possibility that it's not always going to work and it's not always going to be roses. And, we've had our own stuff,
Mm.
but it's in having those big, heartfelt, deep, honest, raw conversations that so much more magic and beauty and love comes from that it makes everything worthwhile.
I feel
And I'm
all
so
of
grateful.
that. I feel all of that. And you know what, Krissy, this is about you also receiving as well. When we're so used to being the person that steps up to give and to empower others and to raise and lift everybody else, having that currency mirrored to you, reflected back to you, knowing that you've got the people in the community, they may not all be, like completely evolved in the way that we think that they are, but they're just like having those connections and people and community around you is just such a huge gift. And for anyone listening, I would suggest, especially if you're going through a process of death or a process of endings, open up to the people you feel safe with, because you will realize just how much magic there is in receiving that love and that support, or someone coming and making a meal for you, or cleaning, or taking your dog for a walk, or just checking in on you. And my biggest advice, and I don't know if this is if this you experience, Chris, but for me, when I was going through a lot of grief, I was incredibly surprised at how many of my tribe showed up instantaneously to love me and to support me and to be on phone calls. It didn't matter what time. And so even if I knew not to take that phone call, the fact that I knew that I had the support was so infinitely important to the process of me actually feeling like I can receive when in that space.
Totally.
Can you tell me, Krissy, because I've always admired this with you, how do you step into choosing yourself? You mentioned you need to know who you are first in order to know who your people are. That's a very big comment to make. Um,
Yeah.
how do you choose you? How do you choose
Yeah.
when sometimes choosing you means that somebody else is going to walk away from you, or choosing you means that someone's going to have an argument with you or create conflict? How do you move through choosing you, irregardless of the outcome or the damage or the whatever happens?
Yeah.
Because
Great question. Thank you. Um, hmm. Before I answer that, I just want to add on to what you said
yeah.
before around support. And, there might be some people that are listening to this that don't have the graciousness that our community that we've built.
Yeah.
And I haven't always had that. I haven't always had amazing people around me. It's taken time and it's taken vulnerability and it's taken strength and it's taken a lot to actually ask people to be there and support me. And so there might be people listening that don't have that. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're not loved and doesn't mean that you're not worthy. And it doesn't mean anything. It just means that maybe this time is for you to find yourself. And I'm going to go into this to find that time and to find that resonance with yourself. So then you can allow yourself to go and find your people. So don't feel like because you're not where we are, in comparison, there's no comparison to anything, but don't feel like because we have this incredible support in each other, but in also like so much community, that it's always been like that. And don't therefore feel like you're different or you're not enough or you're just please don't add any story.
I love that.
So what I really felt like that was a message I needed to share.
Hmm.
And that moves into the beautiful question you've asked. And it's probably one of the hardest things that you will do in your life is choose yourself and to find out who you truly are. And it's been some of my most powerful work I've ever done and shared with other people. And I feel deeply honored that this is probably my calling in life when I go back to my work and in the work that I have done, because it is something that I do. And it's something that I do feel like I embody and empower very graciously. But it hasn't always been like that. And it's taken me a lot of ego deaths and a lot of identity shifts and a lot of really big, honest, hard questions with myself. And that's probably where to start, is to really ask yourself, why do I show up in this way? Why do I do this thing? Why do I hang out with this person? Why do I feel this way with this person and feel this way with another person? And really identifying and having big, hard conversations with yourself. Because there's some people in the past that felt like home that I was like, oh my God, this is my person, because they felt like home. And when I recognized my home was chaos and conditions and mistrust and lack of guidance and lack of support, I went, holy shit, that's not the home I want to feel and be surrounded by. But it was only through that self-inquiry of like, why does this person feel like home? And actually, hang on, what does home represent to me that I identify? Well, actually, that's not what I want. But it was in those continual experiences that I was like, why does this continue to show up for me? Why does this continue to occur? And why does this feel so not great when home's supposed to feel the safest and the most amazing and the most love filled? And it's like, because that was never my experience.
Mm.
So when we can start to have real deep, honest conversations with ourselves and be honest and ask ourselves, am I showing up for this person or this thing or this whatever because I don't want conflict, because I want to people please and I want to give to everybody else and I want to be accepted and I want to be loved, or, insert whatever narrative you can or want in each inquiry. But it's being able to have that inquiry in the first place and being able to really ask the hard questions and be honest with yourself and face off with the deepest, darkest parts of you, because in that you'll start to go, well, shit, I don't want that. Or
Mm.
shit, I don't want to feel like that. Or actually, I don't want that person in my life, because that's not actually the representation of what my life looks like or what I want it to look like now. And that's hard.
Mm.
That's, it's not always roses and it's not always rainbows and it's not always a beautiful evolution. You think about the lotus, it's got to go through the mud. You think about, anything that requires growth, and it's not always pretty. But on the other side of it, you look at a lotus, it's one of the most beautiful flowers in the world. You look at a rose, it's one of the most beautiful, feminine, yet it's full of thorns. Like it's such a beautiful piece of art from Mama Nature.
Mm. Mm. Love what you're
So yeah, so I want you to recognize that you are a beautiful piece of art
saying. Hmm.
from God, from the universe, from spirit, in human form. And one of the beautiful things we get to experience as a human is all of the things. And we can't experience light without having known the darkness. And we can't experience love without knowing what not love is.
Mm.
And when you start to recognize and really pay attention to yourself and where you show up and where you bring light and where you feel the most expansive and where you feel the most free and where you feel most energized, there's so many keys in that.
So
And
many
just keep
keys.
I'm back.
I know. I love that. I just really felt all of what you're saying, and I just felt this instant like, oh, I could breathe better. Like the the tense feeling that I was carrying just speaking about some of these things, because they are very real and they're very, very sensitive topics to me. As soon as you started talking about the rose and the thorns and the lotus and the seed that literally needs to like be destroyed in order for it to grow, kind of remembered, hey, there is, if we just look at the ecosystem, there is a structure to how we are able to grow. And it, and then I think also what I wanted to say just about how do you choose you. When I was going through some really tough times this year, and I realized all of my community was reaching out to me, and it was the best feeling ever. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. Now it's coming back to me. Just on your initial point of um, choosing, if you don't have the community you need to like, it doesn't mean you're bad, you can just choose you. But what happened to me was I was receiving too much support and listening to too many people's points of view, and laid up with what they think and what they feel and their values, which is not a bad thing. It's actually really beautiful, but that was one of the greatest gifts, to come back and go, none of these conversations, like the fact that they're there for me is a gift, but none of these conversations were actually healing my heart. I was still feeling the dark night of the soul. I was still feeling empty and depleted. And I got to a place, and this is what I want all of you to hear. We're going to all get there in the end, I think. But I had to kind of get to a place where I had to come back into my own spirit, my own soul, my own values, what was right for me, the truth of what was going on. And I had to learn about who I was and what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable, and kind of moving into grace rather than being so stressed and moving from fight to fear. So I feel like in that moment is also, Krissy, where I had a prayer and I received grace. So for anyone
Totally.
listening that doesn't believe in God or the universe, that is struggling, what would you say to them?
Hmm. Firstly, thank you for sharing that. I
Ah,
think so many people can resonate. And I know in my 2 years, shutting out the noise was the greatest thing I could ever done. And there's a lot of noise out there.
also,
Um,
sorry, there's also a lot of people, they see what's on the exterior, external, but not everybody has access to the reality. This is why when people are in abusive relationships, a lot of the people can't see it.
exactly.
They can't
And
see it.
denial is a form of protection.
Yeah.
And and it's there is I struggle with this within myself because when we see people that are in when we see, right, it's so much easier to see what's going on in somebody else than it is to see within ourselves sometimes. um but when people like you and I see that, and being the sensitive, like compassionate, love-filled humans that we are, we struggle with that, and we take it on like it's a
You're back.
beautiful. So when we show up for others and we care so deeply for others, we're actually taking away from ourselves, first and foremost. And secondly,
Well, that's a big point.
having that level of judgment, or having that level of thinking that we know better. And it comes from a place of love. But this is something I've experienced, is that, I've always thought that I knew better. How, how do I know that that person doesn't know better? Because they wouldn't be in that situation and they wouldn't be experiencing this. And how dare I think that I am more powerful, more anything than God? God has given that graciousness in that lesson to them for whatever reason. And there is so much power in that. And there's so much empowerment in me recognizing that. And it's been such a hard lesson to learn, to actually just let go and to trust that people are on their own divine journeys, um, and trusting that they will find the way and that hopefully they too can just go within and listen to their own heartbeat and listen to their own sovereignty and their own selves and their own inner child to hear what they need to hear in however long that takes. And what I found, particularly, and I'm going to mention my sister here, what I found is that when I lost my uncle, the inquiry around that was how could I have loved him in a way where he felt loved and not judged?
Mm.
And I'm grateful for that lesson he gave me. It's a God painful, awful feeling to have that and to feel like I didn't love him in the way that he needed to be loved. But it's such a beautiful lesson because now I've taken that, and instead of being so judgmental, instead of feeling like I know better, and instead of putting these parameters around those that I love, particularly when it comes to my sister, I just fucking love her now. I love her. And I tell her all the time that I love her and that I accept her and that whatever choices she chooses to make, I still love her and it's okay. And whether it be now or whether it be in 5 years or whether she never comes around and makes different choices, it's okay. And I trust that my love in just showing up and accepting her for who she is now will prevent her from ever having the same experience that Brad did.
Mm.
And I have moments where I wish I knew that before he did what he did. And I also now know that if it was meant to be any other way, it would have been. And maybe I would never have had that beautiful lesson to just love and meet people where they are, which I feel like is such a big part of mental health. You know, they already have the doubt and the unworthiness and the lack of love to create that mental health, right? That mental disability. Whereas if we can show up for them and just love them, have boundaries. Like my boundaries with my sister is that I love you and that behavior is not allowed in my home. I love you and I will spend time. I want to spend time with my sister. We have so much play and laughter, and I don't want to shut her out. And so now I don't.
Mm.
And so if we can meet people where they are and have boundaries around our own energy and our own time, but also just meet them and love them and accept them and know and trust, regardless of what faith you have or if you don't have faith at all, that everyone's just where they need to be to
Mm.
learn what they need to learn, to show up however they need to show up, and it will all work out in the end,
Mm.
even if it's different to what we think or what we expect.
It's a beautiful, beautiful answer, Krissy. Um, I guess
I
it's
don't even think I answered the question you
no,
asked.
you well, you know you did actually because you've created that coming back to trust that things have a way
Yeah.
to sort themselves, to serve, to work themselves out. But I think you touched on something really deep, which is how could I have loved him any more than I've loved him? And I think for anyone here who is sensitive, empathic, anyone like you, that obviously just feels big, feels big. That's why I really love you so much because I know that you feel big and think big. But also, how does this, can we really, all we can really do is just love the way that we can love, you know,
Yeah.
because often I think that, can you love somebody in exactly the way that they want to be loved in exactly the same capacity that they want to receive it? I don't know if that's possible because it also then takes away
And
that your nature.
totally. And I feel like that, if we love people the way they want to be loved, then we're abandoning ourselves.
Exactly my point.
And we
Talking to
can't do
that.
that. We can't do that. And that's been one of my greatest lessons in, coming back to the question before around like how do we choose self?
Yeah.
In choosing others, we're abandoning ourselves. And I do not want to, nor do I get to abandon myself anymore.
Mm,
And, I feel like when it comes to loving people, we get to love people however we choose in graciousness, right? Like, I know for me, I have loved so freaking deeply for so long. Like, it's who I am, and it's one of my superpowers, and it's also one of my kryptonites, and that's okay. But how I used to love was I would put expectations on how I thought they should live or do, or, because they were harming themselves or they were hurting other
right.
people. And so, I would always push people to be better, push people to do better. And in that, there's judgment, and they feel that judgment. And in that, there is a place where there's expectations around what I perceive
Yeah.
they should or shouldn't be doing. And again, there's judgment, there's expectation, there's so much heaviness that they then feel, which they're probably already putting themselves through. Like, if I come back to my sister, she already puts herself through so much. The amount of unworthiness, her hell on earth from her mind.
Sorry, did you just say
And I
how
don't want to
long?
impose that. Pardon?
Did you just, I missed the last bit, Chris. Was it just how
Oh,
long?
yeah, I just said, every day I know that she is living hell on earth. She's putting herself through that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to put
You don't want to
more
impute.
onto her.
Yeah.
And so when I started to really recognize that actually I don't need to go and put these things on people I love because they're already doing that to themselves,
Mm,
and that by actually allowing the expansion of love and trust and faith and praying to God, to universe, to, whatever you believe, that it allows them to know and have more faith, and to maybe take on a different belief of maybe I am good enough, maybe I am worthy, maybe I am loved, instead of shit, I can't get anything right, I'm always judged, which is the narrative that they've already got running, and then you put more stuff on it, it amplifies that narrative. So what if we change how we show up for ourselves and how we show up for others? Because, I was putting that much on other people because in truth I was putting so much pressure on myself.
yeah. Yeah.
So much. And so what if I just love myself and accepted that wherever I am right now is okay?
Well, I mean, you end up traveling the world and living your dreams.
Right.
So for some
And
of
this is the
us,
result. This is literally the result of going, fuck, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm
mhm,
doing exactly, you know, letting it all go, letting it all just flow with the wind, and just continuing to chase the breadcrumb, not even chase, to just recognize the breadcrumbs of light and joy and play, and following that,
mm.
and
I
then ending up
love
going, how did I get here?
I love that. And it's actually really becoming super sensitive, not only to the pain, but also to the love, to the vibration and the frequency, what brings you, what feeds your soul, what activates you. And it's, you know, fine tuning to the miracles in the mundane. I would say, what
Yes.
brings you more energy, what enlivens your spirit and soul. And don't make that wrong, because sometimes we can say, oh, but, like that's just not ever going to happen. That's not the way reality is, or there's too many responsibilities. There is also your reality does get to be, it does get to feed you. You there? Yeah. And I
Really.
also just want to say, because I know we're running out of just for anyone listening as well, um, be brave and have enough courage. And that's what I love about you, Krissy. Really embody courage. You really embody through the choices that you've made, that you're continuing to make, through being a living testimony, actually choosing you is an everyday process. But actually have enough courage to strip back the identities that you've created in your life that may not be serving you right now in this cycle. They may have served you for 10 years, they
100%.
may serve you in another 10 years, but you know, if it's if your identity is about money or success or legacy or whatever it is, but at the same time something inside of you is dying, don't be scared. If you like, have enough courage to review those places and those spaces in your life. And it
Totally.
does really require a lot of courage to do that, because
It
for some people are
does.
like, well, who am I going to be? You know, tell us just really quickly about the financial. How can someone do this if they're like stuck in survival?
Yeah, absolutely.
A big
So
question for a
firstly,
lot
you
of
do
people.
need to have the courage.
Yeah.
You need to have the courage to just get out of bed. Like if you're really in it, it takes courage just to face the world and to open your door and to step out. And it's building on that. It's building on that courage every single day. Um, Financially, how do you do it? How do you step out of survival into thriving? We live in an age of knowledge and technology where that is just not an excuse anymore. Like if you're telling me that you don't have a phone or the internet where you can go on YouTube, podcasts, TikTok, where there is so much information now, where if you want, like, I sit there and people are like, oh, scrolling's like such a waste of time. It is if you're filling your shit with like mindless stuff that makes you feel crap, where you're watching people online and comparing yourself. But if you're using it to make yourself feel better, like cat and dog videos on TikTok light me up. And I will happily spend 2 hours laughing my guts up because I'm watching cat and dog videos. I'll do it. That makes it brings me joy. Is that a bad thing? Absolutely not. But if I'm sitting there like scrolling and my feed's full of comparison and negativity and the world's going this and wars and like, and there's a lot of that too, is that bringing me light? No. Is that, and I get it, like everyone's got a role. And if we're ignorant to what's going on in the world, then nothing changes. However, how much of that time and energy are we feeding ourselves in that energy? Because I can guarantee you more is going to get done when you actually change how you feel and the vibration that you have from within than you feeling like you need to go and do a protest
Mhm.
or watching someone online and then, keyboard warring their motives or their agenda. Like, feel good within yourself and you will literally change the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, financially, there's so much online to get started. Literally, there is so much online to get started. Where to start? Go and start changing your frequency, changing your belief systems. Because if you have belief systems around, I don't have money, I can't change this, the environments, then that's the place to go. And that's the first step. You need to change your belief systems because once you change your belief systems, money no longer becomes an issue because you can change your money stories. Life and the limitations of what you can and can't do, you can go and change that. Literally, you change your belief systems, you can change anything in your entire world because you have the consciousness and the imagination to create anything. And go and watch movies where you're literally shown how much limitless
I love that.
ability humans and just anything happens. Instead of watching movies that are priming us for fear, go and watch
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the things.
You're
We
back.
have so much available to us. So really do an inventory of who you're hanging around, what you're feeding your mind. If you're watching the news, turn that shit off and stop comparing.
Mm.
Go and watch cat videos or dog videos, or, go out and travel. Go and put your bare feet on the ground. There is so much abundance. Abundance isn't just finances.
Ah,
And if you are not doing an inventory of your life and move to tears, like this trip, I am moved to tears on the daily basis. I literally sit there and it's so beautiful.
mm.
When you're in your heart and you're present, there is so much magic in this world. And so do an inventory of your life. See where you're actually not grateful and then start to change that. Because when you stop and realize actually how abundant you are and how much abundance you have in your life and that is surrounded by us every single day, the finances will come.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And for everybody listening, it doesn't need to be complicated. It can be easy. Again, it can be quite simple. It can be something that you plan. It can be a process, rather than it having to change and transform overnight. Now, if you've got the belief structure that it may, but also
Absolutely.
just, be realistic with yourself and set the goal and actually bring that currency, that energy, that spirit, that belief, the faith in building for yourself the life that you deserve. And I guess again, um, it's about that self-worth of knowing that you deserve that and you don't need to be suffering. I remember speaking to one of my clients and she had an aha moment in a session and she's like, "Oh, I've got a belief that I need to suffer in order to be successful." She felt
I think
like
so many people can resonate with that.
I she got the aha moment and I got the aha moment because I think it's ingrained in our transgenerational wound. And this is
Totally.
this is where we get to, I think, pay it forward, love ourselves. One of the things, Krissy, that you've taught me just even in traveling with you to Mexico is, oh my gosh, you are literally just embodying creating transformation just by being yourself in your presence, just by you choosing and being just by being around you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman is literally just the embodiment. She's creating transformation on a real scale, 24-hour a day, kind of in my view, than having to facilitate a workshop, because you embody what you practice and you embody what you teach. And I'm very honored to have experienced that with you. Do you have any wisdom that you would like, or anything else? You've shared a lot of wisdom. Anything else you would like to share with your viewers today, our viewers?
It takes one choice to change your life. And every single day, every single moment, you make choices and you can choose to suffer or you can choose to be in peace. You can choose to be broke or you can choose to be abundant. You can choose to be angry, you can choose to be happy. It takes the same amount of energy. And so every day you get to choose. And if you don't like how, be that simple.
Oops, we just missed you.
Of course.
We got
So
most
yeah,
of
just
it. It's choice.
beautiful. It does. It comes down to choice. We're humans, we have willpower. So if you don't like the life that you see when you look around, have the courage to choose to do differently. It gets to be easy. You just get to choose it to be easy.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And also, so yeah, creating these choices are super important for yourself. I would also suggest, if you do need to work with somebody, whether it be a therapist, a counselor, a holistic therapist, someone who can bring a voice or maybe reflect to you some of these underground feelings or suppressions, depressions, whatever it is, my suggestion is reach out. there are so many resources within you that you've got access to, but also so many resources outside of you that you can tap into. And I'm a really big believer of having a number of different leaders in your field that have, oops,
100%.
oh, let me just, there we go. People that have achieved what you want to achieve, people that inspire you and empower you, people that are actually walking the talk. So yeah, reach out. And I just want to thank you so much, Krissy, for your vulnerability, for your sharing, for actually also choosing you, because you're going to, by choosing you, it's actually a win for everybody, because they get to also win just by you choosing you. And hopefully, them choosing them will also be the ripple effect in their world.
Absolutely.
I am very grateful for you. I do want to have another conversation with you, beautiful, maybe another time, just around moving away from abusive situations and actually coming back to your own integrity. So maybe we can do
Yeah.
that another time, because I know that a lot of our viewers are in that situation.
Would love
But
that.
I want to love you and leave you. And if any of the viewers want to get in contact with Krissy, or they want to hear a replay of, or if you've got a question, please reach out. And I will be able to let you know what the questions are, or it will be all over social media and YouTube anyway. So you can find Krissy
Really
on there.
beautiful.
Big love
And
to
just in
you.
addition to what you said around, reaching out, I haven't got to where I have just by me connecting with God or with myself. Like I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money into a lot of different programs, into Mary, into, there's so many brilliant people out there doing brilliant things and who embody and have gone through the trenches to get to where they are. By investing, when you do have the capacity, or even if you don't, God will show up and provide that to you anyway. So have faith in that. But they collapse time. When you work with somebody, it collapses time. So you can either learn the hard way or the long way, and it may take you 2, 5, 10 years, or you can work with someone and collapse that time and learn those strategies and those techniques in such a shorter space of time. So I just wanted to leave that because that has been the greatest, I just turned 39, 21, but on paper it's 39. Paper just needs to be corrected. I'm constantly investing in incredible beings. So be mindful and have discernment around who you work with, because there are unfortunately a lot of people out there who do not preach, who do not practice what they preach. So just have discernment around that. But I'm telling you right now, this woman right in front of you is the
Oh,
real deal.
I love
And
you.
there are some beautiful people out there, and we generally know who they are. So if you do want some references on who to go to, what to do, where to go, reach out, because it will collapse time for you. And I don't know about you, but I wish I knew some of this even 10 years earlier. It would have given me more time and space with my son. So if you're a parent, do yourself and do your kids a favor and collapse time.
Absolutely. And also, there are so many amazing free resources out there. I know for me, a while ago, I'd lost everything post COVID, and we were stranded and isolated and lost a house, and just everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Obviously, it was a really amazing reset, but the resources out there online, which is what you're saying, Krissy, you can literally buy
So much.
courses for $99. You can literally download free courses and material. And this
Exactly.
podcast, listen to these podcasts, surround yourself with positive people that give freely of their time and their experience, wisdom, and knowledge to be able to serve and support. So thank you so much.
Without taking advantage.
Without taking advantage, absolutely. Thank you, to say. All my great big love to you, beautiful Krissy. Have fun in Vietnam. I might see you in Japan, and I will
Yes.
I will speak to you really soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Mwah.
Mwah.
Bye bye.